The Sony FE35mm f1.8 has been my most used lens for the past year. I bought it for around $350 second hand, and I have used it on various client projects for my own YouTube videos, and it has never disappointed. I absolutely love this lens. So today I'm going to share with you my honest long-term review of this fantastic lens as someone who mainly used it for video. Starting with the design, it's very compact and lightweight, weighing just 280 grams, and you can easily fit it in pretty much any bag or pocket. If you use a compact camera like the A7C or the ZV-E1, this is actually the ZV-E10, but they're almost the same size, the 35mm will be a perfect fit for you. Look how compact and tiny it is with the camera, very minimalistic and small. It's also made of metal, which gives it a premium feel, and it features weather sealing for use in harsh environments. Personally, I have used it in light rain a couple of times, didn't have any issues, but I'm not sure how it will perform in extremely harsh conditions. Moving on the lens's body, there is an autofocus manual focus switch, a customizable button that I use for focus peaking, a 55mm filter thread, no aperture ring, which I don't really care about, and a reasonably smooth focus ring. I say that because mine sometimes makes these weird squeaky noises. Can you hear that? Oh, super annoying. I think it's because it's old, I'm not really sure, but other than that I don't have any issues when it comes to the build quality of this lens. Moving on to focus, the minimum focus distance of this lens is just 22 centimeters, allowing you to get very close to the subject for creative shots. It also has minimal focus breathing, so if you are doing a lot of focus pull shots, it's going to work flawlessly. I am not really doing a lot of focus pulling shots, but I really appreciate the close focus capabilities of this lens. It makes it super versatile, especially for someone like me who does product reviews and wants to capture normal medium shots and some detailed shots with the same lens without having to use a macro lens. Moving on, the autofocus performance on this lens is pretty much flawless, especially with newer Sony cameras. I have used it on the Sony ZV-E10, ZV-E1, A7 IV, and I didn't have any issues. It's very sticky and dependable. Now let's talk about performance, and I want to mention that I'm not really a pixel peeping guy, but I do care about good overall optical performance. Actually, before I bought this lens, I rented it and borrowed the Samyang 35mm f1.8 from a friend to see how they compared. And the first thing I noticed with the Samyang lens was the major color shift it had towards green/yellow, which really bothered me, and that's why I ended up buying the Sony version. Anyhow, the FE35mm f1.8 is very sharp in the center, but a bit soft in the corners with major vignetting at f1.8. At f2.8, the corner sharpness improves and the vignetting almost disappears. At f4, the image is pretty much equally sharp across the entire frame with no visible vignetting, and at f5.6, the image is razor sharp with no vignetting. I didn't notice any major color shift with this lens. It looks very neutral and balanced, but I do want to mention that it does suffer pretty badly from chromatic aberration when shooting wide open in contrasty scenes. If you stop down to about f4, it pretty much disappears, but at f1.8 it's really noticeable, especially when shooting with an APS-C camera. When I put this lens on the ZV-E10, I notice it much more than on my ZV-E1. I guess that's because APS-C cameras exaggerate the flaws of full-frame lenses. All in all, other than the chromatic aberration issues when shooting wide open, the optical performance of this lens is great for its price. I've shot a lot of footage with this lens and I have never gotten bad results. Another important thing I want to mention, not only about this lens, but Sony lenses in general, is that if you're going to buy a native Sony lens instead of a third-party one, you will most likely pay more, but you will also get the best performance and access to all the camera's fancy features. For example, breathing compensation only works with native Sony lenses. Then, as far as I know, the maximum photo burst of your camera is only achievable with native Sony lenses. And from my personal experience, active stabilization works much better with native Sony lenses. A few weeks ago, I actually rented the Tamron 28-75 to see if I liked it or not. And the first thing I noticed with that lens was how differently the active stabilization behaved compared to my Sony 35mm f1.8. It was usable and I got great footage, but it wasn't as smooth as with my Sony lenses. So you do pay a bit more for Sony lenses, but you also get the best overall performance and access to the fancier features of your expensive Sony camera. That's something really important to consider before buying any lens for a Sony camera. However, just a couple of days ago, I did the exact opposite and I got myself a new third-party lens from Zeiss. This is the Zeiss 85mm f1.8. I'm going to make a first impressions video pretty soon, so stay tuned. Anyhow, I think that the FE 35mm f1.8 is a fantastic lens. You get a super versatile focal length with an f1.8 aperture to blur out the background or help with low light shots, great autofocus performance, a short minimum focus distance for creative shots, minimal focus breathing, and all of this in a super tiny form factor. The only downsides of this lens are the chromatic aberration when shooting wide open and the squeaky noises from the focus ring, which I'm still not sure if it's a global issue or just specific to my copy. If you own this lens, please let me know down below if you have these issues with the focus ring as well. Other than that, I highly recommend this lens, especially for video. Thanks for watching.